Hello, amazing parents and caretakers, and welcome to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm your family empowerment coach, Celia Kibler. I'm a mom of a blended family of 5 kids. I'm a grandma of 9 kids, an author, a teacher, a speaker, and a consultant with over 40 years of training and real-life parenting experience. I'm here to offer you practical, doable tips, strategies, and techniques that will pump up your parenting skills and create peace, love, and laughter throughout your family. In addition, I'll be interviewing some great humans that are on a mission to make your life a better, happier, and healthier life. So let's not waste any time and get started with the next episode of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. I'm excited to have you guys join me because we're bringing on a dad today. And, it's nice to hear from the dad's point of view of how life is, because when parenting, there's so much addressed to the mom, but there's not enough addressed to the dad's point of view. So today we're talking to a dad, and what makes Daryl Potter special is that he has 2 children, one that has special needs and one that is a typical child, if you want to say. And we are going to discuss the balance between the two, the intentional attention that needs to be directed to the one without special needs because of the situation, as well as dealing with the surprise when you find out that your child does have something that you have to focus on, and that is a little neurodivergent, or could be physical, could be cognitive, whatever it is. It's hard. It's like, oh no, how am I going to be able to handle this? So all of those topics and more will be discussed today. But first, I would like to introduce you to Daryl Potter and welcome Daryl to the podcast. Hi,
It's a
Daryl.
pleasure to talk to you again, Cecilia.
Thrilled to have you here. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about Daryl, and then I'm going to let Daryl offer a little of his own wisdom into it and how he decided to really get out there and talk about this. So Daryl, as I already said, is a dad, and he is a career banker and an author, 28 years married, and father of 2 adult children, one typical and one with special needs. And so through this and his books, which we will talk about, he addresses this type of family dynamic and how you can, as a parent and even as a dad specifically, deal with the unexpected and the expected. So Daryl, if you would, tell us a little bit about what made you decide to go from your regular career of being a banker to really helping parents, dads deal with this situation.
Fantastic. So one of the things that, first of all, I love what's happening in our society where we are addressing a wide variety of topics. I can remember the days when it seemed like there were 1 or 2 books on parenting, and they were remarkably limited in their scope of focus and point of view. And I wanted to tackle this because I was approaching the first of all, I didn't approach this from the idea of teaching anybody anything or helping anybody with anything. I wanted to survive my life. So as a career banker, banking tends to be very obviously white collar, but even on the white collar end of things, extraordinarily conservative. And there can tend to be even a bit of a plastic or artificial presentation that's called professionalism. And I think it exists probably to a degree in many professions. There's what's culturally acceptable and what's not. Then you throw in the normal challenges of life into that, and it was distressing to feel like either everyone was living a charmed life, and I was the weirdo, or everyone was just faking it exceptionally well, and that must be exhausting. Then throw in when our daughter was born, and she was known to be having a problem at 10 days old, although she was 8 years old before she was diagnosed. But the medical drama was severe from 10 days old onward. We went to a breastfeeding clinic for an hour, turned into a 10-day visit. And from then on, she was living in and out of children's hospitals. At 8, things became more clear. And that clarity was such that she shouldn't have lived past age 3. And she was still going. She's 24 now, but basically in medical crisis every day and palliative care now. The And so when you add in that extra layer, there are all sorts of extra pressures that occur on top of the normal career, roles of the sexes, what type of parent am I going to be, financial pressures, career, grow your career stages of life. That special needs parent was just such a curveball that I had no tools at the time to figure out how to deal with it. Uh, a special needs parent, and I'll speak for myself because we're all human and different, but there was everything from, is there something wrong with me? This was our first child. So, am I genetically broken somehow that I was unaware of? Uh, there was an element of shame when you think of, other kids from your prenatal class are now starting to sit up or starting to say their first word or starting to walk and you're just trying to get your child off all the medical equipment and bandages and out of the hospital. And so there's that. There's life goes on. If you've ever had somebody die and gone to a funeral, it can seem bizarre going back and forth to the funeral and somebody else is stopping for a slushie at the corner store, and it's like, really, who has time for slushies right now? We're dealing with a funeral, people. Um, uh, but when you're dealing with what turned out to be a palliative care situation for 2.5 decades, the whole world can't stop because you're in a medical crisis, and most of the time, medical crisis only lasts a few days, weeks, or months. So 2.5 decades of being on an alternative track just I don't think it's a lot different than what other people experience, except it's just turned up to 10 and then stretched out over a really bizarre length of time. Even if a family member gets a cancer diagnosis, they last a few years. Sorry to phrase it that way, but and then there's a period of mourning and then there's a period of adjustment. That never starts when it's a 24 plus year journey. And And so I tackled this material from the perspective of how do I deal with life? And then when I was done, it turned into books. But it definitely didn't start with the idea of I'm going to publish this.
Right. More a healing journey for yourself
Exactly.
personally. And
Exactly.
you talk about the overwhelming responsibility that
Hmm.
you have as a parent. And when you think about first-time parents, I do a program called Pregnancy to Infancy, where I take
Hmm.
parents on the last 6 months of pregnancy into the first 6 months of infancy because no one's prepared to be a parent.
Yeah,
Parents will tell you that, oh, it's like this, until you have that baby in your arms and you are responsible for that baby 24/7. Nobody can tell you what that's like.
totally.
And like you said, so now you not just have a baby in your arms, you have a baby that needs special care round the clock. So, like, it is even that more monumental. And I'm sure many times you were like, oh, can we even do this? What? And you have no choice. What's your
Mm.
choice? But it's like, I need to work. I need to, we need to nurture our existing family. And now we have this whole additional, very demanding thing thrown into the loop. But this is our child
Yeah,
and we have to do it.
yeah. Yeah, it was, and there's a bizarre level of if any of your listeners are special needs parents who may recognize this, there's also this weird subtext of things that go on. Like when you present your child at a hospital, there's questions that you start realizing, oh, they're checking if I'm abusing my child because the child's doing so poorly. Uh, and you start realizing, can we get past that, please? Like, I have an actual medical problem here and I'm not causing it.
Right, right, right. And I mean, in their defense, I'm
Sure.
glad they do look for those
Of
things
course. Of
because
course.
it's definitely a reality.
Yeah. Yeah.
But sadly, it's a
Yeah.
reality. Um, but it is, you have to be careful not to compare yourself to other parents. Parents be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I've had such a hard day." Well, you've had a hard,
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff. Like they did have a hard day, and you had a hard day, and you can't be like, "Oh, you've got it easy." Yeah, you have to be personally responsible, as we all do, for our the way we live our lives and the way we react and act towards any given situation that comes up in
Yeah.
our lives, because clearly you don't have control over that. You didn't have
Mm.
control over the fact that your baby was born that you thought would be perfect, as we all do,
Yeah.
and that didn't come out to be the case.
Yeah.
So, just for our listeners, please feel free to share this out. We're talking to
Yeah.
Daryl Potter of darylpotter.com, one R, two T's, and we're discussing his life as a dad of two children, one with special needs, one without, and how he navigated all of this. So, Daryl, when we talked prior to our recording, we talked a little bit about you have this very time consuming, demanding child, not not in a not to her fault.
Correct. Yeah.
She just needs the help and assistance. And then you have this other child that didn't was not that demanding, but still demanding, because still needed the attention that
Of
was
course.
so given automatically to the sibling,
Mm.
because you kind of only had so many minutes in a day, basically. So, what was the age difference between your two children?
3 years age difference.
And who's older?
My daughter's older. The one with the medical challenges was first. We planned on having 3 or 4 kids. We almost stayed with one because not having a diagnosis till age 8 meant that we didn't know. We were rolling the dice on number two. And so we actually moved from Canada's west coast to the Toronto area in Canada, which is more central in the country, to be closer to family before we conceived what turned out to be our son. And that was deliberate because if we weren't closer to that kind of a support network, we were just not going to be able to take that risk on a second child.
And that support network is so important. It's so important to all parents. And
Mm.
if you don't have, some people are probably listening, well, lucky for you, you had a support network. I don't have anybody. You hear, I'm a single parent. There's all these different dynamics. And I encourage the people out there that don't have a support network to find a support network, join groups, hire somebody like me who is a parenting coach, reach out to Daryl, who has experience in this field. And there's all kinds of connection you can find out there. Find it, because that support is so important.
And
And go
I
ahead.
will, yeah, I will say that you're absolutely right. The support is important. The family that we moved for actually evaporated almost immediately. In other words, the theory of family support and the reality of family support wound up being uh, not the same.
Really?
And on my side of the family. Now I've got aunts and uncles that are just glorious and beautiful, but I didn't discover them until a few years ago. That's another whole tale. But my direct, my parents in particular, just had no interest, and so were zero support. The so in a sense, moving was a disaster from a support perspective. But what it meant was we had to build uh, our own family. And so we've got my son's got a girlfriend. They're quite serious, and she was over when we had a bunch of our friends over a month or so ago, and she was interacting with our friends. And her comment later was, "These don't feel like you had friends over. These feel like you had your brothers and sisters over. Like this feels like a." And it's like,
A
yes, that's
family.
correct. We've had to build that. Um, and they now, my wife and I can't take vacations together because one of us has to be with my daughter all the time, our daughter all the time. We've got quality friends who have altered their own family vacation calendars such that they save some long weekends or sometimes even a week here and there where they don't do things with their family. The girls go off and do something, or the fellas go off and do something, and it's not something they ever did before we asked, but we've been doing it for over a decade now, and they actually have learned to love it. And it's been quite healthy for us. But they changed their lives to adapt to ours, which, that's friends that are like family.
Yes. And what great qualities to teach your children.
Hmm.
Children need to learn flexibility. They need to learn persistence. They need to learn responsibility. They need to learn commitment, things like that. And all of those qualities you showed your son
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
whatever your daughter was able to
Hmm.
absorb through that.
Yeah.
And it's it's so important. I tell parents all the time, think of what kind of person you want your child to be. List the top 5 qualities you want. Kind is always number 1.
Hmm.
Kind, respectful, integrity, responsible, compassionate, whatever they list. And I'm like, you have to be that person.
Hmm.
You have to be that person. If you want your child to be that person, you have to be that person. And everything you do in all of that care and commitment to your children and your family is what taught your children, especially your son now in a relationship, what a respectful, caring, loving, kind, compassionate, respectful, name all the adjectives you want,
Yeah.
relationship looks like.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. You guys, it was teamwork. How do we make this work? I'm sure, and sadly, in a lot of these situations, the marriage suffers and the
Yeah.
parents split up and it doesn't work.
Hmm.
You guys were like, how do we make it work?
Yeah. And it's not
Equally as
without its
shocking.
It's not without its stressors. We're quite candid about the fact that, and this is going to sound horrible when I first say it, so
That's okay.
hang with me for a minute. My wife and I are never truly at peace except when we're apart. Now, here's why that is. If we hire a registered nurse to cover us at the house so we can go out for, say, an anniversary dinner, first of all, that's $400 just to leave the driveway because of nursing rates and minimum shifts and so on. So that's pretty expensive before you've even bought the meal. But that phone has to stay on and we have to answer. And we have been in a steakhouse enjoying one of those special meals as an extreme, like we haven't done this in 3 years rarity, and gotten the call and had to drop the meal where it is, pay the check while we're still, kind of in motion going out the door and meet them at the hospital and come home 10 days later. Uh, so the uh, uh, so the reality is the only time we're really at peace is when she goes away with the girls. She does not contact me while she's gone.
Good.
I don't update her while she's gone.
Good. That's
And vice
good.
Yeah, and vice versa. Uh, Even when the couples that we're with occasionally will touch back base at home to see, how the soccer game went with the kids or something. We just do not. And uh, but that can be a toxic dynamic if you're not conscious about what's occurring. Because if subconsciously you're aware that I'm only at peace when I'm not with you, like fully at peace, and you're not consciously aware of why that is, then you can start to interpret the universe as I shouldn't be with you.
Right.
when
But
that's
the
not really the
truth
problem.
is, right. And what the truth is, and what I want people to realize is the reason you are at peace is because she's at peace.
Right.
You know she's getting a break, or she knows you're getting a break.
Exactly.
You're not imposing day-to-day life on her.
Yeah.
She's able to literally escape.
Yeah.
And you can think that sounds terrible, but you have to. In regular parenting life, in regular life,
Mm,
you need to take a step back once in a while.
totally.
You need to breathe. You need to calm yourself. You need to give yourself an opportunity to wipe away the overwhelm and the exhaustion and the absolute, what do I do with my life right now? You have to take the time to do that. And it shows a really deep bond and deep love that you're able to appreciate. I'm here, but she is at peace right now.
And often we have to do that for each other. What I mean is, it's not her running out the door to go off to, she's going to Portugal, for example, this fall with a girlfriend. It's not her um, fleeing, home stress. It's me reminding her, what's your plan for the next year? Where are you going? What are you doing? Who are you going with? How are you going to consciously bring those things to look forward to and those time periods where the cortisol level in your bloodstream can just drop because you're not on shift. Um, and likewise, she'll have to come to me and say, "Hey, you haven't taken a break in a long time. Um, you know,
And
what's your
that's
plan?"
true partnership.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
is true respect for each other.
hmm
That is true understanding that you each need to have your time. And in this situation, it has to be, for the most part, separate.
And when I was the least in tune with this early on. Uh, and so I can remember when my daughter was still only 2 or 3 years old, and I can remember my wife went. This is kind of embarrassing, but my wife went to a buddy, and I would have been then mid 30s, and said, "Listen, basically my wife set up a play date for me. She basically said, can you get a hold of my husband and
Can you play with my husband, please?
yeah, can you take my husband out, to the pub, play around the pool, something, help him to
Play
like
catch.
get out of this for a little while." And that's great. I think some people can fall into the trap of leaning on their spouse to be their social coordinator or
Right.
fixer, and it's like, no, grow up, dude. Yeah, but at the same time, she helped when I needed some help.
So let's segue wobble to the other topic at hand, and
Hmm.
that is your son.
Sure.
So your son, being a little younger, enters into life in this family where his sister needs 24-hour care.
Yeah.
And I am always one, as I coach parents, I'm always very specific to tell them that each of your children individually need to know they are as special to you on their own as they are with the whole family.
Yeah.
As parents, we all have those moments. The pressure builds up, the noise gets too much, and before we know it, we're raising our voices higher than we ever intended. But what if there was a better way? Introducing 21 Days to Stop Yelling at Your Kids, a revolutionary program designed to help you communicate with your children without yelling. Imagine a home filled with understanding and respect, where your words have impact without the need to raise your voice. Created through my over 40 years of experience, this course offers you practical, easy to implement strategies that work in real life. You'll learn through interactive lessons, engaging exercises, and a supportive community. No judgments, just guidance. Because being a parent doesn't have to mean you're perfect. It's about growing, and it's about becoming intentional. In just 21 days, life will be calmer and more harmonious. What if you don't get the course? Where will you be in 21 days? Still feeling like a bad parent? I encourage you to join the millions of parents that I have helped who have found a new path to communication and connection. Visit quityelling.com to enroll in the 21 Days to Stop Yelling course today. And for our podcast listeners, use the code PODCAST for a 60% discount. Quityelling.com, because love speaks so much louder than yelling. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. They need to know. You go on date nights, you do things. I tell people my son is 37 years old and we still go take date nights. We still
Nice.
go out and see a movie and have dinner.
Nice.
It is always important. They're never too old to know how important they are to you.
Yeah.
And in working with the challenge community for like 40 years, I worked with a lot of parents in your situation where one was very challenged and the other, your, basic kid.
Hmm.
And I knew parents that with that second child, whether it was older or younger, had a hard time with behavior for that other child because they were so needy of attention.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like when you bring an infant into a relationship, the toddler will take on the infant qualities. Now they want to have a bottle again. They want to pee in their
Mm.
pants again. They want to, it's
Yeah.
working for this baby. I'm doing it because it's going to work for me.
Right.
I'm going to cry. I'm going to do all those things to these babies because I'm taking lessons from this one. And this one is getting all the attention.
Yeah.
And that also happens. I know a very specific family where that happened exactly with their daughter, and
Mm.
she would take on the qualities of the child that was challenged and to get attention. How were you able to balance that between your two children?
So I'd say we did one category of things right, and we did one category of things, I wouldn't say wrong, but there could have been room for improvement. And so we've made a few adjustments. So
Everyone
in the
wants to be a better parent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So in the we got it right category, we actually my wife brought my attention to a book early on called Extraordinary Kids. It's probably 30 years old now or whatever, but it was quite good. And it talked about the very danger you're describing, where the special needs child sucks the oxygen out of the room, and therefore the others are left, to perhaps get into bad behaviors or whatever, and to gain attention. So we were quite aware of that early on. So even though I described him not ever having had a family vacation, my wife would take him to Florida when she went to go visit relatives, or I would take him camping multiple times every summer,
Good.
and various things like that. So we made sure we got quality time. As he got older, we found walk in the woods were really great. My son loved video games from a young age. I hate video games, but from like 7 years old, 6 years old onwards, we had like half hour father-son video game time every night. Um,
That's a
if
good
we,
daddy, even though
yeah,
you didn't like it. That
exactly.
my son is like in the industry of video games, and
Yeah,
I would still be like, "Why do you like this guy?"
yeah,
He would never wanted me to play with him because I was terrible,
yeah,
but I would take an interest in it anyway.
yeah. And my wife was, patient when she's trying to make dinner, and the toddler or the 6-year-old wants to help, and it's like you're really not a lot of help, but she would bring him in to help, and his help would last, 2 minutes, and then he'd be off, for Thomas the Train or something. But so that part we did well. And thanks to the book and a few friends who offered wise counsel. Uh, we've since, though, as he's gone off to university and he's home now, he's doing a co-op term. He's an engineering student. He's doing a co-op year between third and fourth year. And it's great having him home again and spending time with him and stuff. But things come out where we realize, oh, you were still affected. Uh,
Absolutely.
he
Can't
was
help
a
it.
Yeah, and sometimes he was affected because he'd be walking to school and he would hear an ambulance, and he'd be in a state of panic thinking, is that my sister?
Right.
Things we didn't know was going
Didn't
through his
even think
head.
of.
Yeah. Um, Also, even when he was as young as 6 or 7, he can remember, on a Saturday morning coming downstairs, not having to go to school, but being very focused on reading the room because he could sleep through a hurricane, but he was aware that it might have been a hell night last night. There might have been paramedics in and out of the house last night. My parents might not be in a good state this
Right.
morning.
You guys may
And
be
so,
irritable.
yeah, so he learned to watch and listen to figure out, are we in that sleep deprived post, adrenaline rush, you know, tense state, or are we well rested and ready for 6-year-old babble? And you know, I regret that because the 6-year-old should be able to just babble. Um, but you know, life is life, and not everybody has everything exactly perfect. And uh, you know, I think it's important for us still to have the relationship, though, that at 21, he can share, hey, this affected me this way. And you know, it's very hard sometimes. We're like, you don't know what I was dealing with. How could you lay that on me? But it's like, no, that's what he experienced. Tell me more. Uh,
Good.
how does it affect you now? I'm sorry that that's what you experienced, but he understands. He's not really looking
Right. But I'm
for some.
glad you talk about it.
Yeah, yeah,
And you actually, as much as I say to parents, put yourself in the shoes of your child. Like they'll talk about their 2-year-old. I'm like, well, remember that they're only two. They've
yeah,
only been on this planet for 2 years. 1 year they were a blob, and now they're a kid. So
yeah,
really 1 year. You got to put yourself, but you can never fully look at things from your child's perspective because you're not your child. So it's
yeah,
great that you can
yeah.
talk openly about it and calmly about it and not take it personally.
And what he needs in life is just to be heard. Like he wasn't looking for recompense. He was looking for uh to just share what his experience of life was like.
Right.
And one of the things that came from that actually was, just over talking through university is there was an aha moment where we realized most of his friends, we live in a fairly affluent area of Toronto, suburb of Toronto, and his friends would all go off to Europe with their families, or they would all go off to the Caribbean with their families, and he's never experienced anything like that. Um, and I realized, wow, like he's, we're raising adults, but the adult that I'm raising uh, is going to go off and get married one day, and he's never going to have had to navigate customs or understand how you look up. It's like, all right, let's fix this. So next spring, he and I are going to spend 10 days in Italy. Um,
Awesome.
and I laid out 3 different itineraries. First of all, I interviewed him for 6 weeks over the course of dinners. And I just kept a list, like what kind of places would you like to go? Another night would be, what kind of food would you like to eat? Another time would be, what kind of adventures would you like to have? And we narrowed it down. And then I've laid out 3 itineraries of different options. And he picked a northern Italy itinerary. And now we're in the process of planning that out. But I want to, like, he'll go off and get married one day and he'll figure all this stuff out with his wife. But I want to share that with him. Um, so it's part of the most recent book was something more living well in a broken world, and part of it is accepting, hey, our world is broken, and that's different for different people. But I think everybody's experience of the world is broken in some way, and so how can we live well within it? I can't change his
Right.
experience of that,
What
but
can you control?
exactly, what can I do?
And not everything is broken, but different.
Yeah,
This is different. This is not how
yeah,
we pictured it.
exactly,
This is different. How do we take control of the situation and do the best we can do? And
exactly.
and that, I mean, another life quality you want to teach your kids is always do your best. And that's all you can do.
Yeah,
No one's perfect, nothing's perfect, and trying to be perfect is an impossible goal.
yeah,
So, and the
and
fact that you haven't stopped,
yeah,
a lot of parents will be like, "Oh, well, they're 25, what else can I do?"
Yeah.
You can still be a parent till they're
They,
60,
yeah.
till they're 70. If you're still alive, you're still their parent,
Yeah.
whether they like it. I tell my kids, whether you like it or not, you're still my babies. Just because you're all bigger than me doesn't mean you're not my babies.
I remember being 30 something years old with my daughter in the hospital, and I just wanted a dad figure to come and make it better or sit with me and hear me out, even if he couldn't make it better. Um, we're all still kids,
Yeah,
regardless of if we develop wrinkles and white hair or not.
exactly. We're just wrinklier kids. We go
Yeah,
back to the beginning.
exactly.
We were wrinkly in the beginning. We're wrinkly in the end. But I'm sorry you didn't have that. But what a great dad you have become, which it seems like you didn't have a great example of a great dad, which also brings me to the point of people can spend their life making excuses
Mhm.
and blaming, or they can make a decision and I'm moving forward and this is how we're going to do it.
And that was my wife and I's approach because neither one of us had a background that was healthy in that regard. Um, uh, and so books were helpful. We curated our friendships very deliberately. Uh, Even the camping trips I described, I went through my male buddies and I figured out which ones I liked the trajectory they were on and which ones I didn't. And then I went to the ones and I said, hey, our boys are similar ages. How about we start camping together? And I did camping trips just with the guys at the beginning until I was sure that this was an example for my son because I wanted to find uncles for him to grow up with. And they're still important members of his life. Yeah,
So great. So great. I love how you guys have navigated a very challenging situation, and not that it is any less challenging, but you found your groove. You found, what works for you. And what works, once again, what works for one family doesn't necessarily work for the other family.
yeah,
You have to find what works best for you.
yeah,
That's no one can decide that for you.
yeah.
We're talking to Daryl Potter of darylpotter.com, one R, two T's. And Daryl, I'd like to just touch on your books before we say
Sure,
goodbye. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your books, if you would?
sure. So I'll preface it by saying both books. So I've got a bunch of novels. I won't speak about them. The two nonfiction books that are relevant for this discussion both come from a Christian background. They're both books from the Old Testament. They're both based on books from the Old Testament. So therefore, and both are well regarded in both Jewish, Christian, and even Muslim circles. But they're written with an eye to all audiences. Um, the first is called Even the Monsters, Living with Grief, Loss, and Depression, was really my existential crisis with the fairness of life. It's based on the book of Job, mixture of memoir and commentary on Job, tackling the topic of unjust suffering, which is what the book of Job is about. That's a 3,000-year-old at least poem on the topic of unjust suffering. Uh, and an amazing piece of literature, but very hard for a modern audience to understand. And a lot of the literature on Job is very academically dense. So what I've done by weaving commentary and memoir together is to make it accessible and updated for a 21st century audience. That book resolved an internal tension for me around the unfairness of life and helped me to live at peace with the choices made on my behalf. And again, I would put God in the decider category, but a secular audience could just talk about the universe or what have you. That things have not gone the way this is not what I signed up for. Then you get into once I'd accomplished that, um, it eventually got turned into a book. That wasn't the mission at the beginning. I still wasn't happy with life. So I was existentially calmer with the unfairness of the planet, but I didn't enjoy Tuesday afternoon or Friday morning. And I still had to earn a living. I still had to be a dad. I still had to be a husband. I still had to be a community member. I still had to live within my own head. And that led me to write something more, Living Well in a Broken World. And that's based on Ecclesiastes. Again, about a 3,000-year-old poem. Again, very poorly understood for a 21st century audience. It reads as a bit of a nihilist document if you're not really understanding culture and context. And again, it's a mixture of memoir and commentary as I weave together, trying to make not trying, but I think quite successfully making the dense, hard to penetrate academic literature on Ecclesiastes and make it relatable and accessible. I talk about Led Zeppelin and I talk about fishing and I talk about, just trying to really help people understand what a 3,000-year-old author was communicating in his time in a way that a modern audience can hear. And that book is a book on it literally says, don't care about heaven, not interested in any of that stuff. Tell me how to live now, because this
Right.
place seems kind of screwed up. And I'm not happy with the existence I'm seeing. And it talks about politics and economics and racism and sexism and you know addictions and Ecclesiastes covers it all and does so in a really raw way. So I quite love the book. It's so those are the two books, how they came about. And by the time I got to the second one, I knew it was going to be a book. But the first one, I didn't. That wasn't the mission originally. It was just me sorting out my life.
And sometimes things just happen.
Exactly.
And are those books available on Daryl, excuse me, darylpotter.com?
You got it. You can find it there or wherever you buy books, audio, print, ebook, whatever. Obviously Amazon, but anywhere else, Barnes and Noble, Apple, even your library. I made sure they were available through all the main library apps. So if you've got a library card, and if you're not already aware, you can often get audiobooks through your local library if they're plugged into some of those networks. So
Right.
yeah,
Love that. Well, Daryl, this has been such an interesting conversation and so valuable. And I love how you guys have managed what is a difficult situation and how you guys have made it work for your family. And I hope our listeners heard something, took some piece of advice that they can incorporate into their family. Life doesn't always throw you what you think it's going to throw you. You get the occasional curveball,
mm.
and you have to either go with it or you have to decide, I can't deal with it and get help. Some people do nothing about it and walk away. So it's only up to you that can decide how are you going to handle life's twists and turns and sometimes giant squiggles. Uh, it's up to you. You're in control of you. You're not in control of what happens around you. Important to remember with any kind of family and any
hmm
kind of daily life. Thank you, Daryl, so much for being here. I would like to ask you one more thing, as I ask all my
Sure.
guests, because we've spoken about so many things. But is there one last piece of advice, and it can be on anything, that you would like our listeners to just take away with them that may help them through a similar situation?
My number one piece of advice would come in two parts. One is give yourself a break. Uh, None of us show up to this usually having studied it ahead of time, whether you've got a typical child or a special needs child or other complications in life. So give yourself a little love. I think some people are very negative on their own sense of progress, and we can all do better. But you made it this far. And the second thing I would say, the thing your children need more than anything is love. Maybe it's going to be 2 years before you just have the perfect words or you regret a gap from 2 years ago. But a hug today is worth tons, whether they're 5 and hug you back, or they're 19 and pretend they hate it.
Hug them anyway.
Hug them anyway.
And love never spoils a child. People get confused with that.
Hmm.
Love
Yeah,
never spoils a child. Giving in to their every whim when they want it
sure,
and at that moment, that
sure.
spoils a child. But love and attention, we all need it. We all need a hug. And I love that message. Give
Yeah,
yourself grace and
yeah,
let me add on, don't feel guilty about it.
yeah.
Because you know what else? We spoke about role modeling. You're also teaching your children that they
Mm,
also should give themselves grace when they
good
make a
point.
mistake or something happens or they just need a break. They sit and they relax and they take a break.
Good
That's
point.
okay. So, all of those things you're modeling for your kids, and we all need a break. I love that advice. Thank you for sharing it. Well, Daryl, thank you for being here. This was a wonderful podcast, and I hope our listeners learned a lot from it. I know I speak for Daryl when I say we are both very grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us.
For sure.
I hope you share this out with another parent. Doesn't even have to be a special needs parent. Sometimes you'll find wisdom where you don't expect it. And anybody needs to look at their life in a way that makes it uh more loving, more healthy, more balanced for whatever life has handed you. So be intentional and share this out and leave us a comment if you love this podcast so other people know to also give it a listen. Thank you, Daryl, so much for being here.
Thank you, Celia. Nice chatting with you again.
Me too. And to all of you, as always, I wish you days filled with peace, love, tons of laughter. You got to laugh. It really is the best medicine. Even in hard situations, you got to laugh. If it's really hard, watch a comedy, watch a stand up, laugh. It really is the best medicine. And I will see you all here next time on the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. Bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to the Pumped Up Parenting Podcast. If this episode was helpful to you, please share it with a friend and leave us a review that will help others. Wonder why kids don't come with a manual? Well, wonder no more, because I wrote you one, and it's just won a wonderful Mom's Choice Award. Go to celiasbooks.com and buy your copy of Raising Happy Toddlers, as well as my children's books. I appreciate you being part of my mission to help 10 million parents stop yelling at their kids. Please be intentional and hug on those kids of yours. See you at the next episode.